All right. So to start off, why don't you tell us which one starts first? When does it span? And the specifics about that conference.
Okay, so usually a PBA season lasts, I guess, 9 to 10 months, roughly, and it spans three conferences. The first one, as always, traditionally, is what they call used to be what was known as the All Filipino Conference, but now it's more properly known as the Philippine Cup. So who can play in the Philippine Cup are those who have pure Filipino blood, PBA players who have pure Filipino blood, and foreign players who have proven their Filipino lineage based on certifications or ratifications from the Bureau of Immigration in the Philippines. So those are the only two types of players that can play in the PBA Philippine Cup. So the format is the eliminations, and this goes on with practically all of the conferences, even the second and third conferences. The format is usually single round robin, given that there are already 12 teams in the league. So single round robin gives you 11 elimination round games, and then out of the 12, four, the bottom four, will not make it to the playoffs. So the first seed and the second seed gets twice to beat advantage against the eighth seed and the seventh seed respectively. And then the third seed and the fourth seed will be locked in a best of three quarterfinal series against the sixth seed and the fifth seed respectively. So whoever escapes from that gauntlet of the quarterfinals goes into best of five semifinals, and then whoever escapes the semifinals goes into a best of seven final series wherein they crown the conference champions. So uh, the All Filipino Conference or the Philippine Cup, the reigning kings so far are the San Miguel Beermen. They have won the last five Philippine Cup championships.
Wow.
So that's half a decade of dominance, and
Have they been
there's
five?
no
Oh, you said the last five, so this consecutive five. Okay.
yes. So there's no surprise there because they have reigning six-time MVP Junmar Fajardo. So with that type of talent in the block, you can just plug in anybody around him. And there are no pushovers also. His wingmen. You have former PBA MVP Arvin Santos. You have a dead shot in the perimeter like Marshall Lassiter. You have a skilled and defensive point guard in Chris Ross. You also have Alex Cabagnot, who is more of the facilitator of the team. So no wonder they are stacked, and no wonder they have won the championship for the last five seasons. So
So
that's okay.
yeah, so Jumar is very talented. Obviously, he's also huge. And in a conference that's only Filipinos, is there a big advantage when you have somebody who's larger than most of the people in the league?
So he's tall, number one. Number two, he's heavy. So ask any PBA center currently, and they'll say that when Junmar starts his move on the post, it's hard for them to push him off or throw him off his movement because not only is he tall, because you could be tall but not really physically dominating, but he is both. So that's why they're having difficulties removing him off the block once he gets his position. So that's a big advantage for San Miguel, especially in a conference wherein you cannot have any dominating import to inject that interior defense in your squad.
So if they dominate the Philippine Cup, which it looks like they do, who is up there with them? As far as who do they, if you had to pick somebody who they typically show up against, maybe in the semifinals or the finals, what other teams do we see up there?
Um, you can call the competition sort of a friendly competition because I believe that the top two competitors against San Miguel are also owned by the same corporation. So you have Ginebra and then you have Pure Foods. Pure Foods was the opponent in the last Philippine Cup for the San Miguel. They were the runners up. So Pure Foods is a defensive-minded team. They have a defensive-minded coach, Coach Chito. So they can really lock down opponents, except San Miguel. Of course, the firepower of San Miguel is just too awesome. But as far as any other team is concerned, they can shut other teams down. And of course, Ginebra with Coach Tim Cohn, the intelligence, the basketball wisdom, and of course the experience that Coach Tim Cohn injects to the squad. And he also have players who can translate his wisdom onto the basketball court. Players like Tenorio, players like Japet Aguilar. So those were the three squads that if San Miguel would fall, those two squads rather, Pure Foods and Ginebra, they will give San Miguel the best run for their money.
Okay, let's move forward on to what comes next. What's the next conference?
Okay, the next conference usually is what they call the Commissioner's Cup. So all teams can hire one import with a height limit of 6'7". So before they had an experiment wherein they had no limits in the height for the import. So there was a time in the PBA wherein there were 7 foot imports during the start of the millennium, like 2000, 2001. So they got rid of it and then they went back to the old format wherein um, imports of a certain height are allowed. And listed heights are not taken into consideration because once the import flies in from wherever country he came from, the first thing that the office or the PBA office would do is to get a proper measurement of their height. So there have been imports before that, yes, they have been already in the Philippines, they have flown in, but because they were like a quarter of an inch or half an inch above the height limit, they were sent back. And then the league office would call that team that, well, you cannot have this import because he's beyond the height limit. You have to hire another one. So same format as far as the tournament with excuse me with Philippine Cup, single round robin, 11 games, bottom four eliminated, 1-2 seed gets twice to beat, 3 and 4 best of three series with their corresponding opponents, and then best of five semifinals, and then best of seven final series. So last season it was also San Miguel who won it all. Even though Terrence Jones won Best Import for TNT, the lack of sort of help, offensive help for Terrence Jones did TNT in, especially during the last few games of the series, games 5 and game 6. And that's why it's very evident that Chris McCullough looked fresher, especially in those clinching games, whereas Terrence Jones would dominate the possession and would have most of the possessions come through him. He would take the ball from the top of the 3 point line, and then he would just dribble and then kick out to an open teammate. Whereas San Miguel was able to incorporate Chris McCullough's strength, which is perimeter game, and of course some rebounding to their overall scheme of things, and that's why they were able to clinch the championship in 6 games.
Who was at the bottom of the barrel for that commission or for that conference?
Bottom four: Morocco, Phoenix, Colombian, and NLEX. Colombian is a perennial cellar dweller. They the best place that they have gotten or the farthest that they have come is like quarterfinals. But aside from that, not much luck as far as their stint in the NBA is concerned, PBA rather is concerned so far. So they need, although they are getting They had the first overall pick last draft, wherein they got Roosevelt Adams, so that would shore up their front court. That's a 6'10" Phil Foreign player. But they would need more than that, so that's why it's almost automatic for now to see them more at the bottom of the standings, and it would take a few more moves, I guess, before they can clinch the upper slots or the upper places in the standings.
So there's a few imports that tend to come back a lot. Are any of those in this second conference?
The thing about PBA imports, they they do come back a lot, possibly because it just so happened that the international calendar allows them to play in the Philippines at that moment. So
Hmm,
that's a possibility.
good point.
Some of the imports that have returned from for another tour of duty, when we're just talking about last season's Commissioner's Cup, you're looking at a Denzel Bowles, you're looking at the Charles Rhodes, Olu Ashaulu also returned for NLEX. You have the likes of Robert Dozier, who also played for Phoenix last conference, and Chris McCullough is a returning import as well. Diamond Simpson returned to Alaska for another tour of duty. So a lot of these teams, because it's hard to bring in another player and try to incorporate him into the system. That's why they would rather prefer if they've had success with a previous import. If that import is available to play, they'd rather get him so that the learning curve would be faster, and they will be able to adjust or let him adjust to their style of play and their approach faster.
So there's a couple of names I have in my head. Again, because we do so many
Okay.
leagues and teams, I got to bring in an expert like you. So there's a couple of imports in my head, and I just want to see. Just tell me what conference they were playing in, just because they caught my attention. I just wondering which one. So obviously, Alan Durham, we've talked with before. Is he
Okay.
in this one or the next one?
Alan Durham usually plays in the third conference.
Okay, Justin Brownlee.
Third conference. Although Justin Brownlee also played some portions of the Commissioner's Cup, so he spends more time in the Philippines now than in the
Yeah.
States, I guess. So that's why spend a lot of money bringing in somebody else when you have somebody already ready and fit. And
What
we have the likes of Rick Slaughter and Japet Aguilar anyway, big men who can, hold their own against, hold their ground against the imports coming in. So that's a big advantage for them, I guess.
How about Romeo Travis?
Romeo Chavez plays in third conference.
Okay, and then the last one was Manny Harris, Michigan man.
Manny Harris also played in the third conference. Okay.
Okay, so let's move on then to the third conference. What are the ground rules and what's the third one all about?
Okay. So the imports that you mentioned, they tend to be wingmen. They tend to be, let's say, shooting guard or small forward positions in if they were in the NBA. And the third conference is called the Governor's Cup. Governor. So you have a Commissioner's Cup, second conference, and then the Governor's Cup for the third conference. The height limit of the imports is 6'4". So again, they undergo measuring. So listed heights is not accepted. They have to get the exact heights. So sometimes an import would come in at 6'3" and 3/8 inches. So that's allowed. They are 5/8 below the height limit. So same format, single round robin elimination, a 1-2 seed, twice to beat, 3 and 4 seed, best of three, and then best of five semis, best of seven finals, and then unfortunately the bottom four teams will not make it to the quarterfinals. So for the third straight year, if I'm not mistaken, it was Ginebra and Morocco battling it out for the championship. And Morocco, of course, they were saying that hopefully the third time's the charm. And they had best import Alan Durham playing for them again. But it seems like Ginebra has their number all over again with Justin Brownlee and the guys, and that's why they were able to clinch another Governor's Cup title at the expense of Coach Norman Black and the Bolts.
So we actually had assistant coach for the Bolts, Chris Tan, on an episode. I forgot what number, but recently he was on with us, and we kind of talked about that, specifically what you just mentioned, how it's been Ginebra and Morocco for the last couple of finals there in the Governor's Cup, and kind of wondering what they can do to take down somebody like Justin Brownlee. I want to talk about Justin for a second. He's been there so many times, and really Alan Durham has too, and Romeo Travis, but really Justin Brownlee's been there so much. I would assume every single person knows who he is.
Yeah, especially if you play for the most popular team in the PBA. There's nobody in the Philippines who doesn't know who Justin Brownlee is.
How does the popularity that he has compare to that of maybe somebody who plays for Colombia?
Let's say Araneta Coliseum has a seating capacity of like 15,000, and even MOA Arena has something around that. If you fill it up to the brim, you could have like 80% of the seats for Ginebra fans only. So that's how popular the team is. And given the storied tradition of the squad with the legends such as Sonny Jaworski and everybody that came before them who have donned the Ginebra or any iteration of the uniform before. So that sense of history and that sense of never say die spirit is what made Ginebra Philippines basketball foremost basketball team. And it's not even close. You could argue that San Miguel might be the second most popular team, or Pure Foods maybe, but it's not even close yet. If you ask 10 fans, PBA fans, who their favorite team is, about 7 or 8 would respond Ginebra. And playing for and an import playing for the most popular team in the land, so that just brings your popularity to an exponential level. That everywhere you go, you get mob, or um, even if you're just walking or riding an electric scooter. Funny story, Justin Brownlee doesn't ride a car or a motorcycle to practices. He has an electric scooter, and he just has a backpack. He carries the backpack, and then he has an electric scooter going to the practice facility. So that's how of course, it saves him the traffic, so that's why he does it.
Well, that's
But
true.
yeah, that's how he travels. So just imagine if he stops for a second for, I don't know, a beverage in a convenience store. Just imagine how delighted everybody is inside that convenience store because it's Justin Brownlee and he plays for Ginebra. So that that's the level of popularity that he has now. And now that he has been here for more like roughly close to a decade or so, so he has become a household name, or even more a household name, but more likely a Philippine basketball institution. That's how I see him now. His level, as far as Philippine basketball is concerned.
How approachable are these imports? You mentioned Justin Brownlee goes around in the scooter, but obviously it's probably not advertised where they're staying. But is it uncommon to bump into one of these guys at the mall?
Uh, I guess you would be able to see them once in a while, but in what I could say more affluent sections of the metro.
Hmm.
So even malls in the Philippines have their classifications. So there are malls that if you just want to go to a mall and you're not picky, then there are malls for the non-choosy ones, and then there are the affluent ones, like the ones in let's say BGC, the ones in the south like Alabang. So those are the malls that are for the affluent individuals, and you might see them there, or you might see them at commercial establishments near the practice facilities, because sometimes the teams would house them close to where they practice. So let's say they practice in Ortigas, they would house them in a condominium unit there, or townhouse near. And since they are in the vicinity, so they would choose the likes of Mega Mall and Podium to and even Galleria to maybe hang around or hang out.
Are those practices open or not?
Um, Majority of the practices are closed, so they usually announce it if it's open. They probably post in social media, but that's more like a blue moon occurrence.
Sure.
So it doesn't happen really that often. Maybe for publicity, or maybe they want to rally some support for the players. That's why they open some practices, but that rarely happens.
So we talked about kind of the popularity and the fame of the imports. What about the Philippine born? I'm thinking, so from the outside looking in, the biggest names I hear would be like a Kiefer Ravenna and somebody like that. Is he, how does his popularity and fame compare to that of the imports?
Of course, where Filipino basketball fans would be able to identify themselves more with the local players. And I'm not referring to feel foreign players, rather the players wherein they watch play as young as they are. So they started small and then they went up through the leagues. And some of these players could be the sons of ex PBA players, so former pro players. So in the case of Kiefer Ravenna, his popularity is a formula of well, one, he's a talented basketball player. He has won championships in Ateneo. Number two, his girlfriend is the most popular volleyball player in the land, so that
Yeah, this
adds
is
to his
true.
popularity.
That
And
helps.
number three, yes, number three is part of I don't know, he's part of one of the foremost sports families in the Philippines, the Ravenas. So father used to play in the PBA. Now the head coach of TNT. I did that because we know who the real head coach is based on what we see on the bench. So it's Dickel, but they tag him as consultant uh, so as not to break any rule in the PBA, because only uh, local coaches are allowed to be head coaches in the PBA. So there's a rule like that. So father was a former PBA player. Mother used to play volleyball also for UST, one of the bigger universities
Hmm.
uh, in the Philippines. Of course, his brother, we know his brother, 30, who just finished his stint with Ateneo. And of course, they have a sister, Danny, who currently plays for the Lady Eagles. So that's the recipe for popularity for Kiefer
Yeah,
Ravena. That you will get mobbed whenever people would see him anywhere, be it
really.
in a mall or any other place. He would definitely be mobbed. That's how popular he is, especially with him having his persona or having his face in some big billboards in Makati. So his popularity is way up there. And I guess he would be one of the more popular players in the PBA today.
How does somebody on the high end like Kiefer or Junmar compare to that on the low end of Philippine born? Is there anybody, I guess we could start with this specifically, would there be anybody that would need a second job while playing in the PBA? Would need a second job?
I didn't quite get that last
Would
part of the
there,
question.
yeah, would there be anybody playing in the PBA that would need to get a second job because the amount that they're making wouldn't be enough?
I believe not, because even practice players, so uh, practice players are called for team practices. So sort of an extra body for the players, the regular players, the ones in the active roster to play against and to sort of be a sparring mate for the regular players. They can make as much as in the high five figures already a month. So, and that would be enough for you to sustain provisions for a small family, I guess, your wife and maybe one kid.
So you
And
okay?
just imagine the amount of money that the 12th man or even the 15th man, 15 players in the active roster makes if the practice players can enjoy a salary in the high five figures. So
Yeah.
there are now the six-figure range, which puts you in the higher bracket, higher tax brackets rather in the Philippines. So they wouldn't need any other menial jobs or like full 2 or 3 jobs. It would be enough for them to sustain a family even with that kind of income. But most of them, they use the money that they earn from basketball to invest in other means like businesses, uh, open up restaurants, open up other um, means of income, and of course um, the higher ones can get endorsements. So
Hmm.
uh, the low, let's say the lowest tier of PBA player salary can be in the low six-figure range already a month, and then it goes up to the maximum monthly, which is 420,000 pesos 1 month.
Wow.
So that's the range from. So Junmar is the max. There are other players in the PBA who get the max, so that's 420,000 pesos a month for locals. Imports are paid in a different scale, and they are paid per game.
What?
They are
Yeah. What would give me a number? What would be a? I know it completely varies on who signs them, how good they are, that kind of thing. But give me a rough idea of. And well, first of all, let me back up. Is it
okay.
public? Is it public how much a team pays an import? Like we know Jumar's on the cap, but do we know how much um, they, Next Road Warriors gave Manny Harris? Is that something that we know, or is that all private?
Those are all confidential data.
Okay.
Um, it's so confidential that the information for player salaries was not revealed by the teams themselves, but rather one of the more influential player agents in the PBA. So his name is Danny Espiritu. He had an interview with Spin these years ago, wherein he itemized player salaries, bonuses per wins, and then incentives if they reach this, if they reach that, if they win an individual award. So he was able to somehow give a clearer picture on how much a player can earn based on the base salary and of course the incentives that come with it. But as far as imports are concerned, it's the same. They are not readily available in public, unlike what the NBA does.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if this is a good estimate, but this is in dollars. I guess per game, an import can be paid in like the 4 or 5 digit in US dollars per game. So that depends on the team and the so and then add to that the bonuses that come whenever you reach quarterfinals, whenever you reach semis, win bonuses for every win it goes up. So let's say you get just for example, you get $500 for every win you get in the elimination. It could go up to 1,000 in the quarters, 1,500 in the semis, and then 2,000 in the finals. And then if you win an individual award, there's another incentive that can be tacked to your income, your money. So that's that's a rough idea on how much an import in the PBA earns. So it's on a per game basis because some imports don't last 2 games. So
Yeah, and well, the other thing, the other little asterisk next to that is that, and I know you mentioned it, but it always confused me a lot because, looking at all the leagues at once, the Philippines schedule is really weird, the PBA, right? I mean, don't they play like a team might play 2 or 3 games and then not play for like a week?
unfortunately, that does not happen. Mean like a total shutdown of the league for like 1 or 2 weeks.
No, but like a whole team doesn't it? Aren't their games kind of spaced out as far as a specific team? I mean, they're not playing. Obviously, they're not playing 82 games, but like in a conference, they're not playing that many games.
Yeah, I guess they were able to space the schedule out to avoid a team having more than 2 games per week. So I guess that's the maximum. But those two, and then they make sure that those 2 games are not consecutive game days.
Hmm.
So let's say Colombian plays Wednesday and then Sunday, so not Wednesday and Saturday. So that those are consecutive game days. But
So,
depending on the schedule, there are teams that could have lengthier breaks, like 9-day breaks. They play 1 game and then uh, because of the scheduling, they wouldn't play another game after 9 or 10 days. So it happens occasionally also based on the scheduling.
so where do the majority of these games where are they played?
Majority of the games, of course, there's the Araneta Coliseum, the big dome. There's Mo Arena, Mall of Asia Arena. Those are the 2 main venues for PBA games. And then sometimes they just scatter it to other venues like the Inares Center in Antipolo. And most of the time, Saturday games are reserved for out of town games. So usually you'll see 2 teams play in the provinces, usually on
Oh,
Saturdays.
cool. I
So,
did not know that.
so it happens most of the time, but there have been Saturday game dates wherein they play in the metro. But most of the time, Saturday games are usually on the road or in the provinces.
So, Mo Arenas in Pasay. Where is Ateneo Coliseum?
Araneta Coliseum is in
Ah,
Cubao, Quezon City. Yeah, Araneta Center. So it can seat like close to like 15,000 people, maybe even more, and roughly the same for Moa Arena also.
how many people do you think are going to a game on kind of a low end? If two of the lesser followed teams were playing each other, how many people do you think maybe we're rolling in to watch?
We're talking about inside
Attendance.
the venue, right? Yes.
Hmm.
Let's say let's say Colombian and Blackwater plays.
Okay.
We'd be lucky. We'd be lucky to get 500 people.
Wow.
Yes. In game. Yeah, because considering the amount of the ticket per game, it can take up much of the daily wage of a minimum wage person. So let's say I don't earn much. Why would I still watch a game live when I could delegate that money to my staple needs? So mo- that's a scenario that's a possible scenario as to why attendance is dwindling in in-game attendance rather is dwindling in the PBA. Ticket prices are not really that affordable. They are still within price ranges that are justifiable, but for the lower for fans that are not earning that much, it could be a fortune for them to watch. That's why PBA always comes up with promos in the eliminations wherein present 5 bottle caps of San Miguel beer and you can enter for like 20 pesos. So they have those promos in the elimination round. However, there's a second problem that comes with it, and it's traffic. So
Oh yeah.
if the game is in Mall of Asia Arena, and in let's say you are in Fairview, Quezon City, so that's a far end of Quezon City that's already close to Bulacan. So that's way up there, way up north. Let's say you're from there and you want to watch a game live in Mall of Asia in Pasay on the other end of Metro Manila. Just imagine how many hours it would take you to just travel for a game. So that would discourage a lot of people.
Oh, I'm
So
sure.
those two main factors, um, those there are a lot of other factors because there are a lot of distractions now. Uh, there's there's more there's much to do right now as compared to the 80s and the 90s that uh, before you can really get packed houses in venues such as Phil Sports Arena and even the Cuneta Astrodome in the 90s because there are lesser distractions. There's no internet is not yet stable during those time in the mid 90s. So people really flock to the venue because traffic is not that bad. There's nothing much to do, and ticket prices are more affordable as compared to now. But jumping into 2020, the grim reality is ticket prices may be a fortune, especially for those who don't earn much, and traffic um, can be a pain in the butt as far as traveling to the game venues are concerned. That's why some sports writers, some sportscasters are hoping that the PBA would bring the games closer to the people because it's an eyesore to have a live telecast of a game and then you'll only see tens of people in the stands or even hundreds if you're lucky. So they are like speculating what if we bring the games, especially the Wednesday games, because those are the lowest rated games in terms of ratings and even gate attendance because it's a Wednesday, it's the middle of the work week.
Sure.
So what if we bring the games closer to the people? Let's say find a venue in Pasig or find a venue in Marikina or find a venue in Caloocan so that you minimize travel time, you bring the games closer. And because the upkeep of these venues are not that high, you can lessen the prices a bit. So I'm not sure how the PBA is exploring that possibility, but for now, they're stuck with MOA, Araneta, and Inares Center in Antipolo. So those are the venues where they usually play in Metro Manila.
All right, I think I have. Oh, there is one. We don't need names, but you said it's game to game contract. Can you at least confirm that you've seen in the past imports coming over, not realizing that how serious to take it, and they're out of here within a game or two of showing up?
Yes, they still have to compensate for that one game, the team, and that's why they have to um, pay for the services, so to speak, of that import, even for that one game. And some imports might be shell shocked with the level of physicality or the overall flow of the game of the PBA. That's why you could have an import who was a D1 player in the US NCAA, who was one of the best players in their conference, and then when they come here, they get surprised with the level of competition, especially with the other imports they would have to contend with. And of course, weather could be a factor also. Um, Adjusting to a new culture, adjusting to a new style of play. You don't always and the fact that you don't have much time to adjust also because two games could be in a matter of like 7 days. So you
Yeah.
have to prove your worth in a week's time for you to be retained by the squad. Why still give you the boot? So
Right. And so we did an interview, and you might have actually remembered this from being there in person. We did our more recent episode with Josh Boone, who played
yeah,
all over the world. And that's one of our strongest episodes, just because he has so many stories. But one of them was going to the Philippines. And when he was there, he mentioned it does take maybe 2 or 3 days to adjust, which, by the way, 2 or 3 days to adjust from the US to the completely other side of the world is pretty quick. It takes me longer than 2 days to adjust to the Philippines. But
yeah,
you know
I feel
he
you.
yeah, so it's 2 days, he said, and he within those 2 days he had a game or two. I think it was two games, preseason of some kind, and they didn't go very well for him, and he was out. And he mentioned that, and just being frustrated about, look, you know, he thought he was better than that, and he is a very talented basketball player, but that was just the expression, or the frustration he expressed, was that you're got to
Mm.
go right away.
Yes, you're not even allowed to have a lengthy adjustment period, I guess, and that's one of the reasons why uh, teams would often go for a return import rather than gamble on a new one, because they know that the return imports already know are already acclimatized to the weather in the country. And usually what they do, if they hire a new import, they would hire imports who have played in nearby countries. So let's say this import just finished his stint in Korea, and Korea is just a few hours away from the Philippines. So they would tend to hire imports from that location, or maybe an import who came from one of the Arab leagues, let's say Lebanon, or um, not sure what other leagues are there in the Arab region. So from Lebanon, since that's a tropical country already, they wouldn't have a hard time adjusting when they come to the Philippines. In fact, it might be even a bit colder when they come to the Philippines as compared to the Middle East, because temperatures there can drive up, especially at noontime. So those are the considerations that they put when hiring an import, and that's why the general theory is, let's go for the import that we have proven. Let's go for an import that has already played in the Philippines, because as far as adjustment period is concerned, um, they don't need much time, or they don't need a lot of days to adjust, because they've been here before. They have proven themselves, and they know how to play in such conditions already.
All right, I want to wrap up here, and I did have one that just popped in, and I just want to know what you know about it. How serious is the development league taken in the PBA?
Come
I know
again? I didn't.
they have a D league, right? How much is that?
Oh,
Yeah, how much of a big deal is the D league for the PBA?
if I were to um, put a tier to Philippine basketball, so to speak, PBA is your top tier, and the T League is not even the second tier, because that's the MPBL. So MPBL is your second tier because you have ex pros, you have prospects who are wanting to go to the PBA, but because either they have maxed out their college eligibility, or they are looking for a proving ground to show their talent, so that the PBA teams will be able to assess their skill. That's why they go to the MPBL. And the best example that I can think right off the bat is the finals MVP of the last NPBL season, Mike Ion, who will now play for NLEX. So he was drafted after his stint in the San Juan Knights. So he will now be playing under Coach Yang Yao in the Road Warriors. So PBA is top tier, and then you have MPBL as the second, and then that's the time that you put in the D League, because the level of competition, it might not be as deep as the MPBL, but you also get prospects in the D League, and if I were to form a team of best MPBL players and the best D League players, I would go with MPBL by a sizable margin. And of course,
Is
the reputation of the D League has been tainted recently for the gambling scandals that has happened, wherein teams run up the scoreboard because some gamblers are manipulating the spread. So there has been that reputation of, as far as um, the moral or the integrity rather of the league, it has
mm.
been tainted recently because of those alleged gambling scandals that uh, happened throughout some games.
So we did an episode about MPBL, and I promise you, we're all of a sudden it just sparked one more question, and that's
Okay.
comparing MPBL to PBA. One of the big differences, at least for me looking at it, is that MPBL, the teams represent a city or a
Yes.
village of some kind, and PBA teams represent a company.
Hmm.
How does that compare, do you think, in the fans that come to an MP, or the kind of the fandom that you get to develop with an MPBL team versus the fandom that you develop with a PBA team?
I guess with the PBA, the fans that a team built is more of fans of the personality rather than the team. Aside from the more established teams like Ginebra, Pure Foods, San Miguel, and even Alaska, those four franchises have been there for so long that I'm pretty sure they already have die-hard fans already who have been uh, who have been following the games of these franchises ever since they started. So at least for those four teams, you already have uh, your most loyal rabid type of fans. But for the likes of Phoenix, or the likes of even Rain or Shine, or Colombian, or Blackwater, not sure if how big of a fan base they have already, or if they do have a fan base, it's because they are fans of a certain player rather than the team itself. So that's a usual scenario that happens in the PBA. In the MPBL, they represent what's they represent the territory, so they support the team that represents their zone, their area, their turf. So they are not particular of the player, but they are particular of the team. So I hope you get the difference. In the PVA, you follow because of the players. In the MPBL, it's more of you follow because they carry the name of your city, the name of your province. They're not particular with who is playing because player movement is in the MPBL is very fast.
Mm.
1 month, this guy could be playing for this team, and then all of a sudden you'll be surprised the next month he is wearing another uniform and suiting up for another team. But still, the same team remains, and that's what the the people support. And also in a theoretical note, so this is my own opinion.
Sure.
PBA is a commercial league. Okay, PBA is a commercial league dominated by the brands San Miguel, MVP Group, NLEX, TNT. It's dominated by sponsorships, sponsor dominated by tie-ups, and the big money is there. The PBA, despite the fact that gate attendance, in-game attendance has been dropping, big money is still with the PBA. The brand itself and the prestige of the brand itself still attract a lot of advertisers to put their money into the PBA. MPBL is more of a political league, if I may say, because the founder, we all know who the founder is, Senator Manny Pacquiao. He has political aspirations higher than where he is right now. And possibly the MPBL is his tool to have a machinery that will help him campaign easier when that time comes. So this is based on theory and opinion already, but there's a reason why they always tie up with the local government units of every municipality or province, because that's one way of them of building the network already for campaign when the time comes. So they are masking, or they are um, putting their campaign into a different form that all Filipinos can, or if not all, most of the Filipinos can relate to, which is basketball, the most popular sport in the Philippines. So that's why also they had much gusto of jumping from like 8 teams, and then suddenly they're 24 and now they're 31.
Mm.
So there's there could be other reasons other than basketball itself. That's why they grew up so fast. But that's just me. Okay, that's just how I feel. But um, I do not I do not have any proof to show, but the way I feel things are going, it seems like it's built for that.
So finally, then I was going through all the logos of PBA teams
Okay.
while I was putting this thing together, and I've come up with my definitively favorite logo. And I want to hear which one you think you like the best.
uh, okay. Trying to remember all the logos right now, and okay, looking at team names right now.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
In terms of logo itself, and not really the team, I would have to go with NLEX.
Yes, I was. That was I. Wow. I
Yes,
think it's definitive. Then it has to be them. It is a sleek
yes,
look.
yes. It's putting on my graphic designer eye, so to speak. It's the most sound logo in terms of all the elements within the logo itself. Uh, some of the logos are corny, like the ones for Alaska, even for Colombian. Uh,
I even
so
think the Beerman's got too much going on. But
Blackwater is too simple. So
yeah,
yeah,
and less.
remembering all the logos, NLEX has the best. Yes, they also
Uh,
have cool uniforms. Also, yeah, in terms of color combination,
yeah.
they do have, yeah, they do have yeah, they do have good looking uniforms as well.
Awesome. All
So
right,
the logo might be a big factor as to why.
Lance.
But
I think so because isn't it? It's big on their jersey, right?
yes, they tend to be one of the better looking teams on court. No wonder Manny Harris wanted to play for them. But that's another reason altogether.
Awesome. I appreciate it. And then when this is all ready, I'll send you a link for it. It'll be on the YouTube page. All right.
Okay, just let me know, Aaron.
Awesome. Thanks, Lance.
Okay, catch up with you. Yep, take care.
See you. Stay safe.